right about here. Let's see here. Yeah, we will want to make sure first that we have the same color. So if you use the eyedropper tool, that'll transfer the colors of the body over to your shape. So now we can just concentrate on drawing out this rectangle using the same colors. Now the shaded effect will be applied as well, and we can leave that for right now, but we may adjust it here in a little bit. So you have that. Now let's draw another rectangle for the second portion. You'll notice now it's designed so that the masking is putting it around the eyes. However, we are losing the stroke, and that might not be desirable. So what we can do for that is we can double click on the eyes vector layer, go into masking, and choose exclude strokes and hit apply. Hit OK, and now your strokes are back. So that's how you can, of course, do that. Now we can come in here and we could probably take a look here at these eyelid shadings. So we can just click on the top eyelid, and we can then go over here to make sure we're on the eyelids layer when we do that. We can then come over here then to the style palette, and we will then choose to offset this less than we are. And that's looking pretty good. We'll just do something with this one here really quick then. Maybe about like that. Click OK. So that's looking pretty good now. And it looks like our eyes may be set up and good to go. So now what we could do, we can just hide that masking layer for right now and create a new vector layer. Let's start with the mouth. So we'll name this one mouth, and then we can come over here then to our tools, select the add point tool, make sure auto weld and auto fill are selected, and we'll just create a mouth under the eyes. So we can just kind of come up like this. It'll be an open mouth, little dip, and then we can release. Now, of course, we have that shaded effect and the green color still there. We can just click the select shape tool and click on the mouth. And typically when people draw mouths, they use a black fill color. So we can do something like that if you wish. You can play around with it if you want, but we'll turn the shaded effects off so that we don't have that going on. As far as the stroke, we can leave the stroke as is for right now. I believe that will work. So we can do that, and we can use the curvature tool here to tighten things up, just again to give it a nice sharp effect here for some of the corners of the mouth. Maybe round off some other points like that, and just kind of play around with it just to get things where we want it in terms of the shape of the mouth. And of course, if you're following along and making your own character, you may be making a different mouth entirely. Now we're adding some points here just so we have some leeway later on if we choose to animate or adjust. It's always good to have just a couple extra points there in that event. So once you have shaped your mouth the way you want it, we can come over here, make a new vector, and now we're going to name this one inside. This will be all the inside assets for the mouth. So we can come up here to the fill color, choose white, click OK. For the stroke, we can do a light gray, hit OK. And we'll take the create shape tool, rectangle, and we will draw a rectangle like so, kind of like how you did with the eyelids, just straight across, top and bottom. Now this might seem weird right now because why are we drawing it like this? Well, you will see soon enough here. We'll add some points on the top and bottom of the rectangle, just so that we have, again, some leeway when it comes to designing if we need it. And we will now draw a tongue. So right around here, we'll draw out an oval. Take the select shape tool. We will use a pale red for that, and then a darker stroke just to give it a good outline. And then we can come in here and make some adjustments if we need to. Maybe squish it down a bit like that, and over like so. And now, what we'll do is create a group. We can name it mouth. Then we place inside and mouth, the vector layer, into the mouth group. Then we can double click on mouth, choose masking, choose hide all, click OK. Now you can see here things are coming together. Now for the inside, let's click on the tongue, hold in Shift, and then hit the down key. This will then bring it one step below the vectors you have on your layer. And we can do the same with the teeth, except hit the up key, just to make sure that everything is situated the way it should be. And you can test this out by moving your teeth up and down. You can see that everything is above where it should be for the teeth, and the tongue is in the position that it needs to be. Now we'll need to double click on mouth, of course, go into masking, and then exclude strokes. Click OK. So now we have the lines for the mouth. So now, with that made, we can come in here and make any adjustments. Like with the teeth, we could just move some things around, because we can now see more what this looks like. And just kind of move the tongue around, make sure everything is situated where we want it to be. And we could even adjust the teeth a little bit here too, like with that middle point that we made. We can kind of bow the teeth down a little bit, like so. Kind of just get everything situated like that. Curvature tool also works because that allows us to really easily tighten things up. So it'll be just a matter of playing around, and really that's what a lot of it comes down to, is just playing with it, visualizing, seeing what's going on, and making the necessary adjustments as you continue to work. So now, the next step here is some eyebrows. We have yet to make eyebrows. So we'll make a vector layer, and we can name this eyebrows. Come over here to the Draw Shape tool, select the rectangle, autofill and auto stroker on, and we can come down here. Let's select a dark gray for the fill. Draw it out like this. And we can correct the stroke as well here. Select that shape and just remove the stroke. And we can come in here now and just kind of move some points around to mold the eyebrow. Kind of like that. We can even add some points like this to help us mold it. Kind of bring that up. Just kind of go over like that. And just, shape an eyebrow how you would like to see the eyebrow on your character. Now we can use the copy and paste method with the eyebrows as well. We can flip horizontally for this one at the top, and then bring the eyebrow over like so. And we can even shrink it slightly since it is a little bit more away from the camera. And so now we have the eyebrows in place, which is pretty good. Now you'll want to make sure that your arm, the fourth ground arm, is above everything else, because as an example, let's just set the origin point here to the top of the arm. If we were to rotate this arm up, you can see that the facial features get in the way, and we want to make sure that those are not in the way. So we can just bring that arm above everything else, so it's set and good to go. So now we will want to rig up our character with bones. The first step to this will be to create a bone layer. So on your layers panel, hit new layer, choose bone, and you can name this whatever you want. In our case, we'll name it Monster, since that's kind of what he is. Hit enter, and now you'll want to take all of the layers that you made for this character and bring them into the monster bone layer. So click on the top one, hold in shift, click on the bottom one, and then click and drag until the bone layer turns red, and release. All of your layers are now in the monster bone layer. So now what you'll want to do next here is start drawing some bones. So we can come over here to your bone section here and grab the Add Bone tool, or A as a shortcut. Now, your first step will be to create an anchor or main bone for the character. So you can do this in a couple of different ways. In this case, we will keep it simple. We'll simply start near the bottom here, and then just click and drag and draw upwards to create that bone. So once you've done that, you can release, and we can then continue to draw upwards. So we'll do a torso bone right here, and we can release once we have it positioned. We'll do an upper torso or head bone in this case, and from here now we'll want to draw some bones for the front arms. So we can come down like this, about there, and release. Draw one for this part of the arm, and then for the hand. Actually, let's just redo that really quick and draw this one right here and that one right there. I think that'll look a little bit better. So what we have going on here is called a hierarchy of bones. So far, we have everything connected where it needs to be. Let's hide the body and eyes here really quick, just so we can see what's going on. Now, if we were just to continue on right now drawing these bones, and we click the Reparent Bone tool, you can see, for instance, the foreground hand is connected to the background arm. And that doesn't make much sense. If we tried to move this stuff around, it's not going to work. Right now, of course, with the bone strength, it's not going to work anyway. But trust me, you're going to want a definitive hierarchy here. So, for instance, you're going to want this arm to be connected to the torso, just by highlighting that bone, clicking Reparent, and then clicking on that torso. If you want to unlink a bone, you can simply click off with the Reparent Bone tool, and that will unlink it. But let's just start over here and select that torso bone, and then click the Add Bone tool, and then resume. That's how you would typically do this. Just select the bone you want it to link to, and then resume. As you can see, as we continue to draw these bones, we're basically going from one to the other, because the one that's highlighted red means that's the one that will be the main bone when you draw the next bone. So for the legs, we're going to want that main bone highlighted, and you can Alt-click when you're using the Add Bone tool to select bones if you want, and we can just continue to come in here and draw out our bones here for the legs and the feet. Make sure we Alt-click on the main bone, and then come in here and draw 3 more bones for the front leg. Just like that. Okay, so now looking at this, let's bring everything back here. It's looking pretty good. However, this foot should probably be down a little bit since it is in the front. So what we could do really quick is just take that front leg layer, and we can highlight all the points that make up the foot, take the Transform Points tool, and just bring it down a little bit. And that's all you really have to do. And you might have to make some minor corrections like this as we continue to advance. Now, as far as that bone that we made then, we may want to redraw it for the foot really quick, just so it's a little bit lower. So we can click on that bone and hit the delete key. That will allow you to remove a bone. And then we can click on that leg bone, choose the Add Bone tool, and just draw it a little bit lower now. And then that should work out pretty good now for what we want to do. Okay, so now, as you can see with the Reparent Bone tool, everything is connected where it needs to be connected. everything is looking good. You can always use that tool just to double check to make sure that you didn't miss something. We can now take the Manipulate Bones tool, and using the bone strings, this is what we're going to be using here initially. If we move these bones around using the bone strings, you can see right away that we are not getting the results that we want. It's really distorted, things are grabbing onto other things, and it's just not really working. So what we can do is what's called flexi binding for the limbs. And you can see here, even if we use the bone strength tool and reduce all of these strengths, you can go to the bone strength tool, click and hold left to reduce the strengths, and you can select all the bones with Control A to move them all. You can see still that it's not even working there. So we will need to use flexi binding, which was introduced in version 9.5 of Anime Studio, and it can make this type of bone animation really easy to do. So first, what we'll need to do is come over here to the front arm vector layer, make sure that that is the layer we're on, hold and shift and click all 3 bones for that arm. Go to bone and use selected bones for flexi binding, or Control Shift F, Command Shift F if you're on a Mac. We'll do that for the front arm and then for the front leg as well. So let's come in here and select those bones and then use flexi binding. Now you'll notice here that we might have an issue because as Jim is going in here and selecting these bones, you'll notice that he's actually still selecting the other bones as he's doing this. And you'll see here in a moment why that is a problem and how we can correct it. But just go through and select all the bones for your limbs, and then take your Manipulate Bones tool, and you'll see here initially it works good for the limbs. Of course the body's still going to have some issues here. But when we come down here, you'll notice that the foot is having an issue because we had some of the bones still selected when we shouldn't have had them selected when we were doing the flexi binding for the back leg. And so in order to correct that, what you should do here is come over here to the layer that's giving you the issue. In this case, we'll be selecting here the back leg vector layer here in a moment. Yeah, it'll be the back vector leg. So we'll just click on those bones and make sure that we choose here the back vector layer there, and then go up to bone and then use flexi bone binding. So now you can see it works and we are looking good and things are now better, at least for the limbs. We're going to have to do some correcting now for the torso and other parts of the character. So we will click on the body layer and we will select the main bone. Take the Bind Points tool, which is located right here. It's also I as a shortcut. And you can highlight all of the points and then click Bind Points at the top. Now click on the torso bone, or the bottom torso bone. Select all the points within that area. Say about like that, and click Bind Points. And then use your top or head bone here. Come in here and bind points. Now when we move, you can see things look a little bit better when it comes to the movement of the body. Of course, we still have some issue here with the eyes and the mouth, and we will have to make those corrections here. And there's a couple ways we could approach it. So first, you could just click on the group layer and you could use what's called layer binding. You could just click that layer bind tool and click on the top head bone for each of these, and it would actually work. Because now, if we try this out, you can see that it moves. The problem with this is, if you plan to use smart bones, which we do, smart bones will not work then if you have a group layer bound to a bone. So what you will need to do actually is click on these. First of all, we need to actually get them deselected from the bones. So you can just click off on the canvas with that bone highlighted on those layers just to deselect them. Now we can go inside each of these layers with the vectors and then bind the individual layers to that top bone. This will then now allow us to use smart bones later on, but at the same time use the layer binding so that we can get rid of that distortion that was occurring with the bone strengths. So we'll do that for every single sublayer of those two group layers. So now we move this around. It's looking good. Of course, we still have the hair and the eyebrows to deal with, but the mouth and eyes are now set. So with the eyebrows and the hair, we're going to have to do a couple of different things here. So first, what I think we will do here is we'll click on the monster bone layer and we will select the top bone, and then we're going to add some bones for the eyebrows. So with the right eyebrow, we'll just click and drag like that. Alt click on the main bone and then drag to the edge like that with your left eyebrow. Now, with the eyebrow layer selected, we'll take the bind points tool, and we want that bone highlighted, so we can just bind points to that bone. Select the second bone, click bind points, select the second eyebrow, and then bind the points. So now, if we move these eyebrows up and down, you can see that we can have control over them, and now they won't be affected by the bone strings anymore either, or anything else that we have going on with this character. Now for the hair, we can do some stuff with the hair, but we will return to that at a later time here. We will get to it. We're just going to focus in on some other things as well for right now. So one more thing we can do involves the pupils, and this just might make things a little bit easier. We can select that top bone layer once again, and we are on the monster bone layer in the layers panel. We're going to add a bone just on the outside. I'm just going to draw it out like this. Okay. So now once you have that, you can come in here to your eyes, and we're going to go then to the pupils layer, just like that. And then what you can do is, with that bone selected, we can make sure, of course, that we are selecting here some points then for the eyes here. So we're just going to unbind the eyes from that main bone, select the new bone, and then bind them to this new bone. We could have them on the main bone like we did, or the main torso bone, but now if we take the bone layer here and we go here to the transform bone tool and we translate this bone or move it around, you can see now we can easily control the pupils. So this just gives us a little bit more control when it comes to using the bones, and just one more little thing that you can do. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward here. Now, just a couple of other notes. When you are working on frame 0, and I think I made mention of this before, but when you're working on frame 0, you are free to do all these things without recording. So you can move limbs around, you can test things out, you can move the pupils around, you can do whatever. And it all resets once you select a tool, or if you go to, let's say, frame 1 and page back to frame 0. It'll all reset. Because again, frame 0 is your workspace and nothing is being recorded. This is just where we draw, we can rig, and so forth. So again, just a reminder of that. Now, one more thing to point out as well. When it comes to working with bones, you can see sometimes that the bones might mesh together, and it might be hard to figure out, how to get to a bone, or maybe you're having a hard time clicking on a certain bone. If that's the case, select a bone and choose Hide Selected Bone. That will hide the bone then, so that you can work on the bone that you're trying to get access to. You can do this for multiple bones if you want, and you can always go back to Show All Bones to reveal all the bones again. Okay, so now that we have the character rigged up and ready to go, there are some things we can look at here that we can correct with smart bones. You can see, for instance, when we bend the arm and the hand, we have a little bit of distortion going on there. And this is a perfect case for smart bones. And smart bones basically allow us to create corrections in bone movement that will automatically then be corrected by Anime Studio as we move the bones. So as an example with the head bone here, as we move the torso, you can see here that we have a distortion right there and a little bit right there. So we could easily correct this stuff with smart bones. So the first thing you will need to do is select the bone that you want to affect and come up here with your select bone tool and name the bone. In this case, we can name it head. Now, the reason why we do this is because we need to name the action in the actions panel the same name as the bone in order to create a smart bone action. So go to Window, choose Actions. This will bring up the Actions panel. And now we can create that action using the same name. Now, when you go to do this, clicking New Action, keep in mind you should be on the monster bone layer. We need to be on the bone layer in order to create this smart bone action. So once you have verified that, make sure the name is the exact same as the bone you want to affect. In this case, head with a capital H. Click OK. You'll know it worked when the bone is highlighted in deep red and you have an arrow next to the head action on the actions panel and your timeline is blue. So now we can take the transform bone tool and rotate the character so that we can set the position where we need to make the correction. So right here we'll start with, and this is only on frame 1, we'll alt click or alt right click on the vector layer so that we have the body selected, or you can just choose it from your layers panel. And we can come in here now with the transform points tool and just move these points around to correct the bend. We want a slight arch, but not to the extreme that we had it before. And we can also adjust some points here near the bottom and then double click on main line to go back to your main timeline. Now, if you move that bone layer on frame 0, you can see now that the action has been corrected. Now we can do the same here for the movement when he bends forward. So click on the monster bone layer, create a new action. We'll name this action head 2 and then click OK. Now we can come back over here, rotate the bone, come over here to your body layer by alt right clicking, coming in here, and we can move that point then forward. And you can do any other adjustments that you need to. Going back to the main line, manipulate bones, we can see here what's going on, and it looks a little bit better, although we could still do some corrections here. So let's go back into that first action, and with the body layer selected, we can just come in here and adjust these points a little bit more. That's the good thing about an action. You can always go back into it and adjust it if needed. So now on the main line, we can see now that this is looking better. And what we can do now is look at one of these arms here. So we'll take the manipulate bones tool. You can see again that the bend is just kind of caving in. And so click on that bone layer, select the bone that's causing the issue, name the bone. In this case, we can name it front forearm or F.FA just to shorten it up. Go to your layers or actions panel. Make sure here that you name the action the same as the bone. Come in here, rotate the bone to the most extreme point where it's giving you an issue. Then you'll want to select the arm. Alt right click will work. And then we can come in here and adjust these points. It's kind of hard to see that point, but it's right there. We can just move it up. And we can use the curvature tool as well, just to kind of tighten things up like that. And so now, you can move that out. Maybe a little bit more like so. Okay. Things are looking better. We can then go back to the main line by double-clicking on it. Take the Manipulate Bones tool and take a look. And it's looking a little bit better. We could probably still do a couple more adjustments. So let's go back into that action. And we can come in here and just adjust the points a little bit more. Go back to main line. Take your Manipulate Bone tool and try it out one more time. Now you could apply this to the other arm. You can see the difference there. You can apply it to the legs and so forth, but we'll leave that up to you. For the sake of time, we will now move on to the next step of the step-by-step tutorial. So as I mentioned before, we were going to come back to the hair. And so now, let's take a look at it. So the hair isn't bound to anything right now, and if we move some limbs around, like for instance the eyebrows that have influence on them, you can see that the hair is being affected. And, well, we want to change that, but not only that, we want to add a little bit of bounce to the hair. So we'll select the monster bone layer and click on that head bone, and then come up here to the Add Bone tool. And we're going to add some bones to the hair. So starting near the bottom here, we can just start to create some bones for the first, I guess, blade, if you want to call it, of hair or strand of hair. And we'll do 3 bones, just like that. Now Alt-click on the head bone again and do the same for the second strand. Come in like that. Get those bones in. Alt-click and do the same for the third strand. So now we have bones for the hair. So what's this going to do for us exactly? Well, let's come down here to the hair layer. And what we can do here now is come over here, select the top bone, click Bind Points, and highlight that tip point and bind it. Do the same for the second strand. Click the tip, bind, select the third top bone, click the tip, and bind. I almost said blind. So now we come in here with the second bone on the list and come down here and click those 2 points to bind them. Same with the second strand of hair and the third. Just go up and hit Bind Points. Okay, so now what we can do from here is you can, if you need to, you'll see that we have some points here that aren't quite lining up with the bone, or at least the edges of the bones. So we can kind of come in here and just tweak that slightly if, again, you need to. It looks pretty good actually for us, but we can just make those minor adjustments. It'll just look better in the end. So now, with that bone layer selected, we can highlight all of those top bones, all 6 of those bones. Click on Bone Constraints, come down here, check on Bone Dynamics, and hit Close. We can leave the default settings for right now. Now, you're not going to be able to see any of this in effect unless we have some animation. So let's just create a quick animation. What we can do is come down here to the timeline, and we are just going to do a quick, I would say, bend, just to get some idea here of how the dynamic bones are going to affect. So we can go to frame 24, click the Manipulate Bones tool, click on the head bone just to create a keyframe. Again, just for a test. We'll go to about frame 36, and we can bend forward slightly. Then go to about frame 42, and don't worry about that bouncing you saw. It's not part of what we'll be seeing here. Click to create a keyframe, and then you can move the character back like so, just to get some movement. Now if we hit play, we can see what this looks like. It's just a nice little spring effect. That's what Dynamic Bones does for us. It allows us to just have this basically this physics-based movement applied to whatever you apply it to. So what we can do now is we can select those bones again and come up here, and we could adjust any of these settings to create a different movement for the bones. And a lot of this will be trial and error. It's just going to have to be something you play with to see what you want. So for instance, if we put the torque to 2.5 and play it, you can see we have a slightly different thing going on, and it looks a little bit better, actually, I would say. So you can easily change this at any time, and you can animate them out too. So you could have bone physics placed in, and then you could take them out, and then you could put them back in. That all animates on the timeline. It's just like turning a transparency effect on or off on a layer. So now, what we can do here is, if we take the Manipulate Bones tool and move the eyebrow, you'll notice that the hair is still slightly affected. That's because, first, we have some influence on these eyebrow bones that we really don't need. So we could just get rid of that. But more importantly, we didn't actually bind the bottom pieces of the hair to anything, so we can go ahead and do that as well. So what we can do here first is, actually, let's just highlight, let's see here. Yeah, let's come back here to the bone layer. Let's highlight all those bones and go to the bone strength and just remove the strength of them, because we don't really need that, and it's a little bit distracting when we're not using it. You can see it still works because we have it bound to points. So once you have that set, go to your hair layer, and we will just select those bottom bones, click Bind Points, and then highlight all the points for the hair. Go up and hit Bind Points. So now it's all bound, and you don't have to worry about the hair being affected by anything from here on out. Now we're going to create what are called smart dials. These act as controls which we program to do different things. And you can see they are similar to smart bones. So first, what we'll do is we will select the monster bone layer and click on the head bone. We are going to link this dial to the head bone, just so in the event that if the character moves, our dials will move with them, so we don't lose the dials at some point. So we'll draw out a bone like that, and then go to Bone, Make Smart Bone Dial. So make sure that that bone is highlighted when you do this. We can then name the dial. We'll name it, let's see here. I think we're going to control the eyes first. So we'll do eyes, and we can leave everything else as is, and then click OK. So now you have a dial and an action already made for you. Pretty cool, huh? This is new to Anime Studio Pro 10. So from here, you can see in our timeline we have a duration of 100 frames. So this is helpful because we can come in here and create some animation and just go within these 100 frames, and then the dial, when we use it in our main timeline, will then control whatever we plan to control here. So we're going to go to frame 1, and then zoom in here, and we can Alt and right click on the eyelids. Or you can go to your layer panel and select the eyelids that way if you wish. So we'll take the Transform Points tool here, and holding in Shift, we're just going to move these down so that the bottom line is near the center. We're going to do the same thing here for the bottom. We're just going to move these up so that it meets the center line like so. And then for the top lid, we can just move the points upward to cover the eyes. So now we have a close position. Let's go all the way now to frame 100, because that's where we set this lifetime frame. And if we go to the bone layer, you can see the dial is set to 100, so we can have the eyelids go to 100 as well. And now on frame 100, take the Transform Points tool, hold in Shift, and we're going to lift this all the way up, even so that it goes past the eyes themselves. We'll do the same for the bottom layer. Now, going back here to the main line, if we come down here, take the Manipulate Bones tool, and move this dial to the left, they close, to the right, they open. So you're going to frame 0 to frame 100 within that dial, within that action, and you can control it now with the eyes. And we basically just created a pretty neat effect with just one bone. So now we need to create a second bone for the mouth to do something similar. So what we can do is click on the monster bone, select the head bone, and then we can just kind of zoom in here, take the Add Bone tool, and we can draw a second bone now, maybe below the eyes, just kind of near it. And then Bone, make Smart Bone Dial. From here, we can name this Mouth, and then click OK. So now we have the same situation. This bone goes to 100 frames. We'll start at frame 1. We will Alt-click on the mouth details here. And if you're having an issue, we could actually click on the mouth itself. That's what we're trying to get at. So just go into the Layers panel and click on the mouth if you can't do the Alt right-click method. So now on frame 1, we'll move our points. We'll move the top points down just slightly, because in reality, the top portion of the mouth won't move just with the jaw. But with animation purposes here, we can move it slightly. And we'll just come down here and just kind of move these points so that they connect as close as possible to make it appear that the mouth is closed. So come up like that and down like so. So you have your points pretty much connected here. You could even take the line width tool and taper some things off here if you wanted to. That is always an option, but that is completely up to you. So now move to frame 100. Now, when we are on frame 100 here, to make a shortcut, we could actually copy the frames from frame 0 with Control-C, then Control-V, or Command-C and Command-V, and that will give us a starting point then. So then we can come in here with the Transform Points tool, and then we could make the mouth even wider. So we can come in here and just expand things upward just to give it more movement. Come in here and just make some adjustments. Kind of like this. And then you can see here, as we page forward, we have an opening animation. Now, we can do some adjustments here with the teeth and the tongue if needed. So we can come in here on frame 1 and move the bottom teeth up slightly. And we can just nudge the upper teeth. And when we go up like this, we can then either copy frame 0. You could copy frame 0, or you could just move it yourself. We actually kind of had a little bit of trouble grabbing those frames. Sometimes you have that issue when you have a bunch of frames together, but we're good. We can just manually move those teeth down, nudge those up slightly, and then you can move your tongue down as well. Now, we forgot to put this on frame 100. We're actually on frame 90. So let's just go to 100, highlight those keyframes, and put them at 100. It's a simple fix, and sometimes that happens. So now you can see we have the mouth opening. Pretty cool. If we go back out here to the main line, by double-clicking on it, going to our bone layer, and moving the mouth bone with the Manipulate Bones tool, we can see how this looks. So again, these smart dials are really powerful. And this is just the tip of the iceberg with what you can do with them. For this animation, our character will have a prop or a metal ball that he will be interacting with. We'll also need a background. So first, let's come over here to the Layers panel, and we're going to make a new vector layer outside of the bone layer. And we can name this ball. So once you have that, we can come over here to the Draw Shape tool, select the oval, and we will create a gradient for this. So we can choose gradient, and we'll leave it how it is right now and click OK, because we can adjust it once we apply the shape, and get rid of any other secondary effect if there is one. So once you have that with the Draw Shape tool, we're just going to hold in Shift and draw out a circle. Once you release, you'll see the gradient, just like that. So we want this to look like a metal ball, like it's going to be a heavy metal ball. So what we'll need to do first is line it up with his feet, so that it looks like it's on the ground. But also we'll need to correct the colors. So we'll use the Select Shape tool, we will remove the stroke, and we will choose the gradient settings. And first we'll choose radial, and then we can come in here and start adjusting the colors. Now, if you click anywhere outside of the other two swatches, you can create other colors for this. So let's do that and hit OK. And now with the Select Shape tool, move the gradient up like so. That way we can get an idea of what it will look like. And then go back into the gradient settings here, and then we can make our color corrections. So we'll start with the black swatch, and we can make more of a darker gray color. Click OK. For the second swatch here, we can lighten that one up. And we can see these effects happening in real time with the ball itself. So be sure to take advantage of that as you are making these adjustments. We can do the same here for the second swatch here, and come back here, and basically from here you're just going to have to play with the colors until you get something that you like. You can see we're going kind of back and forth here. We'll even make this one a little bit lighter, like so. Click OK, and then we're good. Now from here you can pinch this or move it around to set the gradient, so we can go about like that. So we're good now, I think, with that metal ball. Next, we're going to need a background, just something to add, some color for the character to be set on. So we'll create a vector layer, name it BG, put it beneath all the other layers, take the Draw Shape tool, select the rectangle, come over here to the Style palette, we'll use Gradient again. This time, we'll choose Linear, and we can simply click on these additional swatches that we made and hit the delete key.